Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Nerd Corner. That is right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, my nerds and nerdettes. Welcome back to this wonderful podcast that has been a little absent these last few weeks, and for that, I apologize. As you can see around me, we have a beautiful new backdrop, behind me. So you can see me with my fancy glasses. My hair is all did. I got my AMC shirt on. So there has been a couple of things that have been happening behind the scenes these last couple of weeks, which is a reason why I haven't been recording or putting out any episodes. So for that, I apologize. As you guys knew, with the last couple of episodes that I recorded, obviously I was making the big transition from New York back down to Florida. Because for those of you that know, I lived in Florida for about 3 years. And then recently I went up to New York and I, stayed in New York for a couple months, to work out some things and kind of get everything all situated and get taken care of. And now, with all that being accomplished, I have started the transition back down to Florida. And, I have been down here for roughly this weekend, I think will be about 3 weeks. So I've been down here for roughly over a month, so far. So obviously, there's some give and take, there's some positive, there's some negatives, but overall, I feel like I am in a pretty good place. And that's only going to improve with time, obviously. So because of that, with the transition and obviously the drive down and just moving everything and just getting settled in here and reacclimating to Florida, and then obviously going to work and doing this, just trying to figure everything out, put those last final, puzzle pieces in place. It's been a little bit busy. So, I've been prioritizing more of my mental and physical health and well-being, and getting all that situated, instead of the podcast, and for that, I apologize. Obviously, there are, those of you that, do come in and you do support this channel, you subscribe, you watch the videos and everything, and you like the videos. And for that, I will always be grateful and I will always appreciate that. Obviously, everybody here knows our long-standing history, from the beginnings of Two Sons podcast to our emergence, and then to me kind of taking over the reins and continuing the legacy and building my own podcast on top of that called The Nerd Corner. Um, so again, I really do enjoy doing this, from the bottom of my heart. No matter how I'm feeling or what I'm doing, I always enjoy sitting down and talking to you guys, and putting out content for you guys to enjoy. So obviously there were a couple movies that I still wanted to talk about, from 2024, like Kraven the Hunter, or The Lion King, the Mufasa movie. However, because we are, almost 3 months already, or about 2 months into 2025 already, I didn't want to fall too far behind. So I thought I would just start hitting the ground running and talking about some 2025 projects, that have already came out. So, um, I'm trying to record, as many episodes as I possibly can, the remainder of this week. So I have, a couple of episodes slated for, the month of March, the beginning of April. Just kind of give myself, a little bit of a buffer and, kind of catch up with all the content and obviously put some stuff out for you guys. So today we are going to be discussing Captain America: The Brave New World. That's a movie that has came out, a couple of weeks ago. And obviously, depending on how you talk about it, is very hit or miss. So I saw it about 3 times. I have everything all set up. I got all the scores, I got all the box office, the budget reports, cast, crew, all the pros and cons. So we're going to be talking about that today. Keep in mind, for the future, I plan on doing an episode on one of Disney Plus's brand new shows, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. So season 1 of that just wrapped up not too long ago, so I want to discuss that. Um, and then obviously, there are a couple of other projects that are currently going on right now. We have Invincible season 3. I never really covered Invincible on this podcast, but I wouldn't mind doing it. I'm just trying to get a grasp for everything and just try to figure out, exactly what I want to do and what episodes, I want to put out and stuff like that. So I figure, I'll start off with some Marvel content. Obviously there's been different leaks, there's been different trailers of all different projects, across all different genres. So some of these, next couple episodes might be a little bit shorter, just because, they might be trailer coverage or, some footage leaked, and, it won't be too much to talk about. But, I'm going to do everything in my power to, make sure I have some episodes for you guys, and kind of get back into the rhythm. So after that long ramble, like I said, obviously I am doing okay. I sound completely stuffed up right now because the one thing I did not miss about Florida was my allergies, and my allergies are killing me right now. So that's why I feel so stuffed and congested. But overall, I'm doing pretty good. Like I said, just kind of getting things back on track, developing those routines, and just trying to be, bigger and better. So we're taking that one day at a time, obviously. Um, but yeah, now that we've finished kind of going over all that and talking about all that, we are going to dive into today's episode. So like I said, we are covering Captain America: The Brave New World. So the release date for this was actually Valentine's Day, February 14th of this year, 2025. So the content rating was a PG-13. Obviously the genre, considered action, adventure, sci-fi, all that good jazz. And it was directed by Julius Ona. Now, if we're curious to see what other projects this director has put out, um, let's see. So, interestingly enough, it is that really. There's no way that's okay. I'm not even gonna tell you what I just saw. Um, so he's not really known for too much, to be completely honest. A lot of these movies I honestly never heard of. Um, so I guess you could take that with a grain of salt, right? I mean, we don't really keep track of the directors, or we don't really, put a big, like, oh, like I can't believe so and so directed it. Um, we don't really cover that too much, but I do like to give a shout out to the directors who was directed by. And, if you guys are familiar with the director, obviously just kind of shout out, a couple of their other projects, just so we can get an idea of, like, oh, what their history is, like, what else did they direct? And then how did that translate over to the movie that, they just directed. Um, so now we're going to get into some of the cast and crew. So obviously, rounded star-studded cast. We have Anthony Mackie obviously portraying Sam Wilson. We have Harrison Ford playing President Thaddeus Ross. We have Danny Ramirez playing Joaquin Torres. We have Shira Haas playing Ruth Surafoff. And then we have Carl Lumbly as Isaiah Bradley, followed by Tim Blake Nelson as Samuel Stearns, and John Carlo Esposito playing Sidewinder. Um, so obviously those are, pretty much all the main actors and actresses that you need to know. I know there's been some controversy, surrounding some of them, but honestly, I don't care. Really, the only controversy is around the actress that plays Ruth, Shira Haas. Apparently, she is obviously an Israeli actress, and obviously the whole political climate going on between Palestine and Israel. Obviously, some people aren't happy that they supported a Israeli actress, in the Marvel movie. But again, I don't really care too much about that. But regardless, this movie does have some star-studded cast, and we do see some familiar faces. So obviously, we see Harrison Ford portray Thaddeus Ross for the first time. He's obviously the actor that portrayed him in some of the other movies. Unfortunately, he passed away, so he was actually casted as Thaddeus Ross for this movie. Obviously, we all know Anthony Mackie. He does a great job as Sam Wilson and in all the other movies playing the Falcon. We have some actors such as Danny Ramirez, and Shira Haas, obviously, being welcomed to the Marvel Universe, playing new roles, as the next Falcon, and then, kind of Black Widow, but, maybe this next generation's Black Widow, because we do find out that she was an ex-widow and she was trained in the Red Room. And we have some actors like Carl Lumbly, making his returning role as Isaiah Bradley. He was obviously from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show, so he makes his return here. And some, big actors like, Giancarlo Esposito playing characters like Sidewinder, and making their introductions to Marvel as well. So all around, good cast. Really nothing negative to say about it. And like I said, any controversy surrounding all of them, I just don't care about, because I'm able to separate the actor or actress from whatever is going on behind the scenes, obviously. So that's obviously the cast. Now we're going to take a look at the scores. Well, actually, no, before we look at the scores, we're going to look at the budget, and we're going to look at how much it has made worldwide in the box office. So obviously that's extremely important. The budget for this film was about $180 million. So far, according to, latest sources, and, technically it is still in theaters, obviously, we are sitting at about $344.5 million. So it has made back its budget, which is good. But obviously it is not a huge heavy hitter at the box office. Um, A little surprising, to be honest. The Captain America franchise and at least those movies have been very popular. We could debate whether or not it's because there is a new Captain America or just the plot or the story of the movie. Obviously we'll go into pros and cons about the movie and maybe why some people didn't want to go see it or just didn't really like it and why it got the scores that it did. But overall, the important thing is that it did make its money back. So again, it's not the huge box office release of like Infinity War, Endgame, or some of the other Captain Americas. But it is definitely below average, I would say, for a Marvel movie. More specifically, I mean, again, not even reaching that 500 mil mark. I mean, again, I don't know what the current box office report of it. I mean, we could probably look it up real quick, just to see what the current box office is to this day. Um, because obviously, like I said, it's still in theaters, so people are still going to see it. So it did grow a little bit. So right now it's sitting at about 370.57 million US dollars. So, I depending on how much longer it's in theaters, I don't see it really even reaching 400 million in total honesty. So it looks like it's going to cap out at definitely that 370 375 million USD. So um, now taking a look at the scores, we are going to cover some different websites, just to kind of get an idea of how good it was. So obviously we usually look at Metacritic, we look at IMDb, and then we look at Rotten Tomatoes. So we'll say Rotten Tomatoes for last because there's a little bit more information there. But we'll start with IMDb and Metacritic. So Metacritic gave it a 42 out of 100. So obviously that is below average, and it is a pretty rough score from Metacritic. IMDb gives it a 6 out of 10, a little bit more generous. But again, we're still, right above, above average, average rating. Um, if we're doing math here, obviously a 6 out of 10 is about like a 60%, and that's, failing. So again, both scores from Metacritic and IMDb are relatively average. If anything, they are definitely below average. Now we're going to get into Rotten Tomatoes because this is where it obviously gets more interesting because Rotten Tomatoes not only has the tomato meter, but it also has the popcorn meter. So obviously, we have a love-hate relationship with Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, we always have, right? I don't know how the critics do their scores, when you see, other movies like, for example, like Mickey 17, which is certified fresh, has an 83%, right? It looks like the stupidest movie in the world. I mean, I could be totally wrong, and it could be like a really fun movie. But you have a movie like that being certified fresh at 84%. um, and then you have a movie like Captain America Brave New World. Right now it is rotten. It's not certified rotten, but it's rotten at a 48%. So again, below average score, not even reaching 50%. um, However, the popcorn meter, or what the audience perceives this film to be, is sitting at about 79%. So we're at that like 79, 80%. So according to the audience, it's a pretty good film, right? You look at like, in terms of like below average, average, above average, good, you know, I would say like, high 80s is kind of like very good. And then like obviously 90s is more like excellent, stuff like that. So we see the audience giving it about an 80%, which again shows the difference between the critics and then obviously the audience. So overall, after looking at over 10,000 verified ratings, most Marvel fans and most people that went into the film, they enjoyed it. It was good. Of course, I'm sure they came out and there were some things that, they didn't like or they wish were different, but overall, it was a good film for them. Kind of scrolling down a little bit, we're just going to go over we're going to go over basically the critics' consensus, right? So according to the critics, we see that Anthony Mackie was capable, takes up Cap's mantle and shield, but Brave New World is too routine and overstuffed with uninteresting Easter eggs to feel like a worthy standalone adventure for this new Avengers leader. I mean, in a way, I could understand, where they're coming from and their point of view. Um, but I think they are being a little too harsh. But I definitely do understand where they're coming from because, again, it is very similar to projects such as like Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Um, I don't necessarily agree with the fact that they're uninteresting, when it comes to their Easter eggs and everything. Unless you're just not a fan of, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. or the Incredible Hulk, any of the Easter eggs and stuff are just not going to be appealing to you. Um, looking at some of the audience reviews, well, we're not really going to cover, uh, you know, some of the audience reviews because I thought they were going to have like a consensus for the audience, just like how they did for the critics, but they don't. So, but yeah, overall, again, taken away with a grain of salt. So we see that, Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, and Metacritic are all giving it about a below average score. Which honestly I'm not surprised because I found out because that's when I was making my transition back down to Florida. Um, I was able to see the film before it came out because obviously working at the movies. Um, Overall I enjoyed it. Right, I had my problems with it. I wish they did some things differently, but overall I enjoyed it. I think I would give it probably a solid, I'd be fine with like a 7.5 or like, 8 out of 10. I think that's a relatively good score for this movie. Obviously, there were some things that they did wrong, and I wish they did a lot differently. But overall, it was fairly well done. I think for, an introduction into like phase 5 and this like, kind of like new generation of Avengers and superheroes, I thought it was fairly well done. Now that we've kind of covered, the scores, the box office, the cast, and, like we usually do, now we're going to wrap up by kind of discussing some of the pros and cons of the film. So obviously we got a couple of different pros. We got more cons than pros, unfortunately. Um, but we're going to cover the cons first, because there's more of them, and then we'll end it off with the pros, because we want to end on something a little bit more positive, obviously. So looking at some of the cons, we see that one of the first ones is mediocre execution. So this film is criticized for being aggressively mediocre and clumsy in its execution. I don't really understand that too much. At first, when I watched it the first time, like, I kind of understood what this meant because just, it felt like a very long film. It felt like we were like almost an hour into the film and there was like no action. I understand that this is kind of supposed to be like similar to the Winter Soldier, where it's like very espionage. You don't know who to trust. You're kind of revealing dark secrets and history and all that. So it makes sense that there's not too much action, right? But I feel like we're like an hour into the film, and the only action that was in the film was like just in the very beginning. And I was just like, what is going on? I was like, I kind of expected a little bit more from a Captain America film. However, not a lot of people do this, but after watching it a second and even a third time, anything regarding, the pacing and the execution of this film, I think it was fixed like right away, to be honest. I think going in and giving it multiple watches, it definitely fixes a lot of those problems, and the second time I still had some reservations. I was like, this still feels like, a long film, and, is it really interesting me? But I didn't feel that as much. And then, like, I think by the third time around, I was like, yeah, okay. I was like, this is pretty interesting. Um, I'm not saying that, like, I watched these, like, all 3 times and I was just, like, on my phone and I just wasn't interested. But I noticed that as I watched it more and I really analyzed it more, those issues kind of went away from me. Um, One of the second points that they bring up is the lack of fun. So the movie is described as dull and boring, lacking the fun typically associated with Marvel films. I mean, you know, uh, it's tough. It all depends on what they mean by fun, obviously. There were some good jokes. There were some good quips here or there. I thought it was kind of timed perfectly and it was put in the right place when it had to be. There were a lot of people that kind of like chuckled and had a laugh in the theater, when it first came out. So there were definitely some moments that were fun, but we don't expect a Captain America film to be like a Guardians of the Galaxy or like a Deadpool. It's not all about like fun and action. Well, not action. It's not all about like fun and laughs and stuff like that. That's not the type of film that Captain America is. This isn't like a Thor Ragnarok. Um, so I don't necessarily agree with this point. But like I said, I think the times where they kind of put some comedic jokes in it and they kind of joked around and they didn't take themselves that seriously. I thought it was very well done and I enjoyed it. Um, Again, the third point, I could believe a little bit more, but this kind of falls under the trope of a predictable plot. So the plot is seen as predictable and filled with cliches. Um, It depends. I mean, I think after you kind of get a feel of like what the plot is and like how the movie's going to end up, yes, I do think it could be predictable and it's not as shocking, right? um so that is definitely something that the film doesn't have going for itself, right? It's like once they introduce like the main antagonist, their kind of motivation, and how things are shaping up, it's very easy. And if anything, it's very similar to somebody like Zemo from Captain America Civil War. So, you definitely could be sitting there and kind of guess, what's going to happen, and most likely it's going to happen. So that is actually one of the cons that I do agree with. I wish it was a little bit more unpredictable, when the plot was a little bit more unique, especially if you're introducing, Anthony Mackie's Captain America for the first time in their, first movie. You want it to be a little bit more exciting. Um, these final two cons we have here are simplistic solutions. So the film solutions to complex issues are considered overly simplistic. I mean, yes and no. I mean, I guess, it really just depends on how sophisticated, you want to get with fictional politics, and like, solving those problems. I mean, it is a little kind of cookie cutter and, cut and paste, but it really just depends on how sophisticated you want your problem to be. um, and I don't think it was as simplistic as they make it seem because I mean, obviously they had to, both Captain America and the Falcon, they had to jump around from problem to problem, until they could finally solve it. And even when they figured it out, they were still unsuccessful because obviously towards the end of the film, events happen, and even though overall it stopped in the end, it still took them the whole movie to do it. So, again, take this one with a grain of salt. I mean, compared to the Winter Soldier, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the Winter Soldier was a little bit more complicated. And I think the only reason why this one is kind of seen more like simplistic is just because, it's like very similar ideas. Finally, we have bland characterization. So some critics found Sam Wilson's character to be bland and lacking depth. Yeah, I don't really agree with that at all. I mean, obviously we see his character flushed out very heavily in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so most likely those critics just did not watch that movie. And if anything, we see him grasping with the lessons and the conflicts within himself that he had in that show in this movie, because he's always constantly wondering if he's going to be enough, if he's going to be enough, like if he deserves the shield and the mantle. So I don't think he's bland at all. So I would definitely not see this as a con at all. Now we're gonna get into some of the pros. So there's really only like three pros, or three important details to kind of take away from this movie. So obviously this won't take too long. Um, but some of the pros is obviously Anthony Mackie's performance. So Anthony Mackie shines as the new Captain America, bringing charisma and depth to the role. So I definitely agree with this. I really like his version of Captain America. I like the message behind his Captain America and what they're doing. The fact that he's just an everyday guy and he gets hit, and you know what, he gets back up. He might not recover as quickly as someone like the Winter Soldier or Steve Rogers Captain America. Um, if he gets hit, he has to like go to the hospital, or get wrapped in bandages, or get a sling put on him. So it's definitely interesting to see him as Captain America. He's constantly wondering if he should take the super serum or if he deserves the mantle, if he's going to be enough, and whatever. There's a really nice scene between his character and Bucky, uh, where he's having that conversation with Bucky. But I really grown to love his character, to be honest. I think his character is, I guess, it is very charming. The only thing that I don't like about his character is I think he's a little too diplomatic. Um, I wish sometimes he would just kind of like punch more and ask questions later. Um, but it is a different approach that he's taking to Captain America and what it means to be Captain America. And he does a really good job doing that. So we also have an interesting premise. So the concept of a black Captain America and the political undertones are intriguing. So again, this was covered a little bit more in Falcon the Winter Soldier when Sam Wilson and Bucky kind of uncovered Isaiah Bradley, a black super soldier that was used during the Korean War. And he was sent to prison for 30 years and experimented on, and the public or nobody really had ever had any knowledge that he existed at all. Um, so this is definitely more of a point for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show itself. Um, but again, they don't really touch upon it too much. I mean, obviously Sam Wilson and Thaddeus Ross, they have their back and forth. Harrison Ford is like, you're not Steve Rogers. So I'm sure there are people that compare him to Steve, but I don't think it's more of a race thing. I think it's I mean, it could, but I think in this movie specifically, I'm not looking so much at like the fact that he's black, but just the fact that he's a whole new character, and uh he brings a whole new mechanic to Captain America. Finally, we have espionage elements. So the film has some well executed espionage scenes that add excitement. So this I do agree with. I mean, I don't think it's as complicated or as advanced as the Winter Soldier, but again, I think because it is very akin to it, or it takes definitely some themes and some similarities from that movie, it helps it be a better movie overall. So kind of like you don't know who to trust. Like this kind of goes deeper than, um, you know, you think it does. Is definitely for some interesting storytelling, and it, like I said, as I watched the movie more, you definitely became more engaged, and you were definitely more interested to see how things were going to play out. So again, I think overall, if you're going to go see this movie and you need something to take away from it, obviously, Anthony Mackie does an amazing performance as Captain America, and Sam Wilson. Regardless of what people say, it is a interesting concept and just an interesting premise about the role of Captain America and what he brings to the table as Captain America, and how people perceive him and how he even perceives himself. And then obviously having some espionage elements similar to like the Winter Soldier and stuff like that, definitely kind of gives it a boost it needs to make it a little bit more interesting. Um, so again, I mean, I think overall, like I said, I'm giving this film about an 8 out of 10 shields. Right? We always like to compare it to something that relates to the movie. So I would definitely give this a solid 8 out of 10 shields. I think some of the CGI, some of the animation is a little lacking and is a little lazy, especially with how long CGI and animation has been around for. Little fixes like that surprisingly could bump up people's scores. At first I wasn't too really interested in the antagonist or the plot, but after watching it again and again, it definitely became more interesting, and I was definitely more intrigued as the movie went along. So I think for the start of Phase 5, for the start of Sam Wilson's Captain America, and what that means for the rest of Phase 5 and the MCU, I think it's a good start. I mean, obviously we'll have some other projects come out later this year, like Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four, so we'll see how they play into the timeline and all that. We had some recent picture leaks, concept art from Avengers Doomsday. This is a great place to start. Obviously, we just had Daredevil Born Again start. Have the series start. So it's gonna be very interesting. But again, I would give this film a solid 8 out of 10. I highly recommend go seeing it at this point because it's been out for a little bit. Just wait until it either comes out on streaming or wait until you have like a discount ticket day, like a Tuesday, and go see it in theaters for a discounted price. Just because it's been out for a while. If you do have a chance to see it in IMAX or Dolby, I do recommend seeing it in IMAX or Dolby. I think it just gives it a little bit more, of experience and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say about the film before I start rambling. So like I said, go check it out. Let me know what you guys think down below. And go support your local theaters. And trust me, it's super slow, so you're not going to be fighting for seats. But thank you guys for coming out so much to another episode of the Nerd Corner. So yeah, a little rusty. Like I said, I got some things going on behind the scenes, but like I said, I really want to push myself to start recording some more episodes and kind of get back into the swing of things. So again, thank you guys for coming out so much to another wonderful episode of the Nerd Corner, where I covered Captain America: The Brave New World. So if you're wondering where you can find this podcast on social media, I am on TikTok and Instagram at the Nerd Corner, and I am also on YouTube at the Nerd Corner as well. So make sure you have your notifications on. You follow the social medias, so you are ready when the episodes post. Usually, the episodes post every Monday when I do record. So, like I said, just keep those notifications on. I will post to the social medias to update you guys. And yeah, like I said, please let me know what you think down below. Obviously, I love all the love and support that you guys give me on a daily basis. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. And yeah, we're almost to 100 subscribers on YouTube, so that would be awesome. Really, continue to show the growth in this podcast, for how long it's been around. And yeah, again, thank you guys so much for coming out. I really do appreciate it. And until we see each other again, I hope you guys have a great day, great afternoon, a great evening. Please be safe. Do not do anything stupid. And I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.